What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to episode 12 of the All Aussie Rules podcast. We're here for the review of a gather round. The AFL show went to Adelaide on the weekend. All 9 matches were over there, so we're going to have a look at those results. Who were the winners, who were the losers, and all of that. We'll have a look at some news, look at how our tips went for the weekend, review each match, and then finish the episode with a look at the awards leaders. Don't forget to like, comment, and all that jazz on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're watching this / listening to this. You can also find me on Instagram and on Twitter / X. So without further ado, let's jump in it. So news from the weekend's games. Tribunal news. Pickett from Melbourne once again has jumped up off the ground, made contact with a head. At some point, you would hope he learns his lesson. He hasn't yet. He's been offered a week. Melbourne are going to challenge it, which is an interesting decision. As I said, it's not his first time he's done this. It's probably the least bad one of all the ones that he has been rubbed out for, but I just don't see how he doesn't get a week for this. Also, Carlton, Lockie Fogarty, he's been rubbed out for a week for getting Nat Fife slightly high. They've accepted that one, so he will be missing this weekend's game against Adelaide on Saturday. That's the tribunal news. Other news, there was a few controversies with umpiring decisions, and obviously the Carlton Fremantle game was the major one there. AFL have come out not doing a captain's review, which I think is the right call. There's no way that they can bring in a captain's review, in my opinion. That would ruin the game. I think sometimes bad decisions are made. You got to accept them. Fremantle only have themselves to blame. You can't carry on like that. If it had gone back to the centre with less than a kick in it, with under a minute, that was still a chance. The players need to. Sometimes, I know it is hard. White line fever can get you, but it's important to put that aside and focus on trying to win the game. There was still 40 seconds and there was still a chance, but nonetheless they weren't, because they gave away an extra goal. Have a quick look at the ladder, how it sits after round 4. GWS undefeated at the moment, absolutely cruising up top. 4-0. Melbourne and Sydney have played an extra game. They're both 4-1. They're going well. Carlton, Geelong, both 4-0. Obviously, been winning close games for both of those teams. So their percentage isn't very high, but 4-0 is a great start. Port Adelaide, 3-1. They're sitting 6th. Fremantle was 7th at 3-1. And Bulldogs, St Kilda, Gold Coast, all 2-2. And then you're going down to Collingwood, Essendon, Brisbane, Richmond, and then the 4 undefeated 4 teams that haven't won a game yet: Adelaide, Hawthorn, North Melbourne, West Coast. So that is how the ladder sits after round 4. A couple teams having the bye this week, so we'll be down to only 2 teams having played an extra game after this week. So yeah, we're starting to get back into a relatively normal season all of a sudden. We'll have a look at how my tips went on the weekend, and here they are. So as you can see from that graphic, we went 9 of 9. It wasn't a tough week. I think most people probably went 9 of 9. There's only a couple that were debatable which way you'd go. First game, Melbourne by 17 we went with. Melbourne won it by 15, so we're only a couple points off. Good start. Brisbane beat North Melbourne by 70, so we're what's that, like 5-6 goals off, but not too bad. Port Adelaide won by 69. They destroyed Essendon, so we're a long way off on that one. West Coast put up more of a fight than expected. Sydney only won by 26. Carlton won by 10, so we're pretty close with that one. Geelong only won by 4, so we're 4 goals off there. GWS won by 28, so we were only 7 points off. St Kilda won by 7, not too far. And then the final game of the round was Collingwood won by 5 points. So we went 9-9. As you can see, takes us to 29 and 30. 29 of 38 for the season, so not too bad. Pretty solid start. Much better week this week. It was a lot easier week. Pretty sure most people get 9-9, but we'll take it nonetheless. We're trending in the right direction, so we'll hopefully continue that going forward over the next month or so of football. First game of the round in our review was Adelaide Melbourne. It was on Thursday night over at Adelaide Oval. Obviously all the games in Adelaide on the weekend. We have 5 out of 9 at Adelaide Oval. Adelaide had started the season rough and needed this win, and they just didn't deliver. That second quarter they got blown out, and you take that out and it's probably a pretty close game. They only lost by 15 points and they lost the second quarter by 24. Bailey Fridge kicked 3, Pickett kicked 2. As we discussed before, he has been suspended for a week. They are taking it to the tribunal, but we'll see what happens there. Van Rooyen kicked 2. And for Adelaide, the only multiple goal scorer was Darcy Fogarty. Looking at this match, what went wrong for Adelaide is, I don't know, they're just struggling a bit at the moment. Their disposals, they won the game in disposals mainly with handballs. Were they handballing too much? I don't think so. I think they weren't. They went inside 50 very well, like a lot. +6 inside 50s, but their forward efficiency going forward, that 4 weeks in a row, has been horrendous. They're very close to the bottom team in the AFL for forward efficiency. Let me get the exact numbers, but I think they are the bottom. Yes, they are. They go forward at 37.15% of the time do they score when they get inside 50, which is just way too low. Top teams are over 50%, and most of the AFL is sitting between 44 and 50. So that's a sign of how bad they're going forward at the moment. The differential as well is -12%, which not the worst in the league. The only team worse is North Melbourne, but yeah, that is just killing them at the moment. Their ability to score when going forward, because they're getting the ball forward a lot. They're just not making use of it at the moment, and that's their biggest issue. Clearances they lost this weekend, which they had been going pretty well. But yeah, their main issue that they need to tidy up is just their ability to score when going forward. I'd like to see them putting a little bit more pressure as well, because they're just kind of lacking in that department with tackles and whatnot. But yeah, the main thing going forward. Melbourne, however, they're just chugging along. Take out their first week where they lost to Sydney. They're going very well. They've gone and beaten the Doggies, Hawthorn, Port Adelaide, Adelaide. So the Port Adelaide one is the big one. The other 3, a little bit unknowns at the moment, but Doggies are going pretty well as well, and they comfortably beat them. I don't know, they don't seem to be playing the best football. The last 2 weeks they've lost inside 50s counts both weeks, and won both games, both in Adelaide, against both of the 2 Adelaide teams. They just seem to be doing enough each week. Whether that's playing the best football, I don't know, but they are doing what they need to. they've got plenty of time in front over the last 4 weeks, and that's shown up with 4 wins in a row. The tackling's been good, so Melbourne getting all ticks at the moment. Best players on the ground, Christian Petrarca was, in my opinion, best on. He's had a tremendous start to the season. He's continued that here. Gawn was good. Oliver was very good. McVee was good. I think he had 7 intercepts in the first quarter, which is insane. Slowed down after that, but got him off to a good start. Bailey Fritsch kicked 3. For Adelaide, Saligo was my top player, and Keane, Smith, Dawson, and Rankin. 3 votes Petrarca, 2 Saligo, and 1 to Maxi Gawn. We go on to Friday. There was 2 games on Friday. The first one was over at Norwood Oval. We had Brisbane hosting North Melbourne. Obviously it was in Adelaide, so no one was actually the really home team. Brisbane blew them out in the first quarter, or first half really, 75 to 19 at half time. Second half was pretty uneventful. Zorko got injured and went off. Not Zorko, sorry. Lockie Neal got injured and subbed off. But yeah, not a huge amount of excitement. Joe Danaher had a lot of the ball, kicked 5 goals. Hitwood kicked 3, Charlie Cameron, Lohman and McCarthy with 2 each. No multiple goal scorers for North Melbourne. Best players, Joe Danaher, McCluggage, Dunkley, Wilmot, Zorko. Lockie Neal probably unlucky not to be in the top 5. He was probably Brisbane's best halfway through the third, late in the third when he got subbed off. I think he ended with 27 touches. Probably might scrape a vote in Brownlow. He might even get 3, who knows. But probably unlucky to not make the top 5 from my votes. North Melbourne, Coburn was very good. Sheasel had a lot of it. Davies Yanaki was good. Surrey was good again. I think he's been in the votes all 4 weeks. And Tom Powell likewise. I gave 3 votes to Danaher, 2 to McCluggage and 1 to Dunkley. Brisbane, they got the win, they needed it. Obviously they hadn't won a match going into this one. That just steadies them. They've played, as I've kind of highlighted every week, they've been playing good enough footy at times. They just haven't put together 4 quarters. They probably didn't again against North Melbourne, but just the class difference in the 2 teams. They put them to bed at half time and they just cruised home. Anything outstanding? I mean, plus 40 inside 50s on the weekend. That is an extraordinary number. They've won inside 50 count every week this year, and this one was plus 40, which is ridiculous. Their forward efficiency finally turned around from sitting around about the 40% mark. They went at 55% this time, so big improvement there, although it was against arguably one of the worst at defending the inside 50s in the competition in North Melbourne. Clearances, they were good again. They won that. Dominated marks inside 50. They had 22, which is a very high number. And didn't trail at any point of the match. Cruised to an easy win. What can we say about North Melbourne other than they are not looking very good at the moment? Their style of play just doesn't really appear to be there, though in my opinion have looked worse and worse each week. And the results are kind of saying that. They started with 39-point loss against GWS, which actually isn't too bad. Then hosted Fremantle, lost by 26, which again was okay. Then lost by 56 to Carlton, and then followed it up this week with a 70-point loss to Brisbane. I think so far they've only won 3 quarters for the season. 2 of them were against Fremantle and 1 was the 3rd quarter here against Brisbane. They get smacked in disposals pretty much every week. Their inside 50s they get smacked. Their efficiency with disposal isn't too bad. It's pretty AFL average, but they get smacked forward efficiency terribly. They don't convert going forward, and they do not stop other teams from converting, which is a big issue for them. Clearance work this week was the first week they've lost clearances, so that's not their issue. Getting the ball forward isn't really their issue until this week. Obviously, they lost inside 50s by 40. But they're just getting smacked all around the ground, really. And yeah, their tackle pressure's okay as well, but they just need to tidy a lot up. I think they've got a lot of good young players, but they just don't have that class around them in the more senior levels to really help them out and watch them grow. Game 3 was Friday night. Port Adelaide hosting Essendon at the Adelaide Oval. First quarter was competitive, 24-21 at quarter time. After that, it was a schmozzle. From that point, it was 13 goals to 3. Port Adelaide blew them out of the water in the second quarter, and then again in the last. Rose was massive. He's probably played one of the best games of the season so far. Finlayson kicked 3. A little bit of controversy with Finlayson at the moment. Burn-Jones kicked 3. Willie Rioli kicked 3. And Gresham kicked 3 for the Bombers. As I said, Rose was best on. Horne-Francis was good. Houston, Butters and Finlayson for Port Adelaide. Essendon, Merritt was their best. Ben Mackay was actually very good in the back line. He's had a good start to his Essendon career. Nick Martin, Gresham and Caldwell bringing up the top 5 for them. Votes, Rose clearly 3, Horne-Francis 2. I've given Merritt 1. He had a lot of it and was pretty decent with it. But I could easily also see 3-2-1 going to Port Adelaide, whether it goes to Houston or Butters for that one vote. Port Adelaide, their start to the season's been pretty good. You take out their loss to Melbourne last week and they have won the rest of them. Obviously West Coast wasn't much, Richmond wasn't much, and Essendon have okay results for this year, but I don't know if they're fully there yet. So still debatable on whether Port Adelaide are the real deal, but a 69-point win is nothing to be sneezed at. They played very well on the weekend. They've won all 4 first quarters, all by less than a kick, and then after that they've won every third quarter. They've won all but one fourth quarter, so they're winning a lot of football at the moment, and that's showing why they're winning games. Inside 50s, they've won every week by double figures, so that's pretty much AFL best right there. The 4 weeks have been plus 17, plus 11, plus 21 and plus 20. Their disposal efficiency is very high every week. Their converting going forward outside of their loss against Melbourne is very good. Their clearance work is good. They're just strong across the board at the moment. They're controlling the ball every week. They've had plus over 100 marks every week except for the loss against Melbourne. Marks inside 50 is pretty high every week. Their contested marks is very good. They're just ticking a lot of boxes at the moment. It'll be interesting to see how they go once against some more competitive teams. As I said, their 3 wins probably not against the best teams in the AFL, but we'll wait and see. I think 2 weeks time they play Collingwood. That'll be a big game, especially in Melbourne, for them to prove how good they really are. Essendon, however, they're hit and miss. They've gone win-loss. Their win against St Kilda, although against the run to play a bit, was very good. They beat Hawthorn, and then they've lost to Sydney and Port Adelaide. I don't know what to say about them. They were not great on the weekend. It was a pretty poor performance. They showed alright in the first quarter and then just fell apart. As I said, they got smacked inside 50s. Their forward efficiency was terrible at 32.6%, so they didn't go forward, and then they didn't score when they went forward, hence why they only scored 6 goals, 6 for the match. Interesting to note, they've won the free kick count every week. That doesn't mean much, but they have. Clearances, this is the first week they've lost clearances, so that'll be a bad sign for them. They win in uncontested footy, and they did again this week, but they're okay at contested. They got beaten this week though, and over the last 2 weeks they've only been leading for 11 minutes. Yes, they did win one of those games, but you're not going to win too many games football if you only win leading for 5 minutes a game. Tackle count is very good for them. They do bring a good amount of pressure, so that is a one positive sign for them. Going forward, game 4, we headed Saturday to what I said was definitely not game of the round, and it wasn't as bad as we thought. Let's be honest, West Coast won their first quarter of football for the year. They actually won the first half, which is a massive effort from them. They were 5 points up. Sydney kind of put them away a little bit in the second half, but still nowhere near as much as we expected. West Coast Cripps kicked 2, Waterman 2 for Sydney. Amati, Gordon, McDonald, Hayward, Isaac, Heaney all kicked 2. Taylor Adams got his first goal for the Sydney Swans in his first match for the Swans. Votes I went Duggan, Yeo, Bailey Williams, McGovern and Cole for West Coast, and Sydney. Errol Gordon slightly ahead of Isaac Heaney as the best player on the ground in my opinion. They were both very good. Grundy, Blakey and Rowbottom. As I said, 3 votes Gordon, 2 for Isaac Heaney, and I gave Duggan 1, but once again, I think he deserved it, to be honest. I think he was the 3rd best player. Looking at the 2 teams, West Coast, that's their best performance of the year by quite a long way. They hadn't got within 50 points of anyone. The 2 weeks before, they'd kicked 5 goals and 3 goals, so to get 11 is a pretty good result. They're still struggling to kick straight. 3 weeks in a row, they've kicked more behinds than goals, but they did get their first quarter win of the year, their first half win of the year, so it is a definite positive for them. They even equalled inside 50s, which was very good from them. Harley Reid kicked his first goal for the Eagles. He showed some very good signs. I still need to see more of him. I think he spends a lot of quiet times in games, but when he's active, he's going very well. He gets the ball, he makes things happen, which is what they need from him. Forward efficiency was up this week on what it has been the last couple of weeks, so that was good. And yeah, what else can you say about them? They're just not going well enough, but it was definitely a much improved effort this week. We'll see what they can do this week. Back in WA, Sydney were obviously a touch disappointing. They haven't blown anyone out of the waters yet this year. They got Melbourne by 22. Collingwood they beat by 33 down in Melbourne, which they were pretty comfortable most of the night in that. They beat Essendon by 30. They lost to Richmond by 5, and then they've come back and beat West Coast by 26. If they go as good as they probably think they are, they should be probably winning the one on the weekend by 50 plus. They probably should have done the same to Essendon, but they're 4-1, so they haven't done too much wrong going into there. I think they've got the bye this week, or do they have it the next week? The next week, sorry. So yeah, they're going all right. What can we say? The last 2 weeks have probably not been great, and they'll be wanting to turn that around as quickly as they can. Isaac Heaney is carrying this team. He's been in career best form, clearly career best form. there's been some other good players, don't get me wrong, but he's just playing outstanding football week in, week out. If he continues that, he's Brownlow to lose, really. There's other players playing well in the league. Petraka's one, but he's just week in, week out been in the top 3 players, and it's just continuing. Not much more to say about that match. It was never going to be the blockbuster, and to be honest, it wasn't an overly exciting game, other than the fact that West Coast gave him a little fright in the first half. Game number 5 of the weekend was probably the biggest game of the weekend. Fremantle Carlton, Adelaide Oval, first of the double header at Adelaide Oval on Saturday. Fremantle led a fair chunk of the day, pretty much all day, and then Carlton came hard at the end. Fremantle got the lead back, then Carlton got it back, and then a couple little bits of controversy at the end with a mark being paid then when it was touched off the boot. Clearly touched off the boot, but the umpires didn't see it, and then they gave up another goal directly from that before it even went back to the centre, because the players argued with the umpire, which, let's be honest, you should know better. Low scoring affair, 9 goals to 10 goals. Charlie Curnow kicked 3, Cottrell and Kennedy kicked 2 each, Emmett kicked 2 for Fremantle. Best players, Brayshaw had a lot of it. Sharp, Aish, Young and Sarong was okay. For Carlton, Hewitt, Wiedering, Curnow, De Koning and Boyd. My votes, I went Hewitt 3, Brayshaw 2. Wiedering was very good. He had a lot of intercepts. He had a lot of the ball. So I gave him 1 vote. And yeah, as I said, could have gone either way this game. Fremantle led most of the way. They just kind of let it slip in that last quarter. But they certainly wouldn't have lost many admirers from that match, I don't think. If we have a look at them, obviously first loss of the year for them in Adelaide against Carlton, a bit of a neutral game, neutral venue. They're still looking very good. They won 3 out of the 4 quarters on the weekend, granted by 1, 2 and 6 points, and lost the last quarter by 19, which is a bit of an issue. They've now lost 2 out of the 4 fourth quarters, so they probably need to tighten the end game of their matches up a little bit. Their disposal efficiency week in, week out is very good, one of the best in the leagues, consistently better than their opposition. This week was the first time they haven't really converted going forward, so maybe just a blimp. Maybe Carlton were really good at defending against them. Clearance work, Freo dominated that. Carlton, that's probably Carlton's biggest problem at the moment, is their clearances, which is surprising because they do have some good players in their midfield, but that's just their big issue probably. Fremantle spent most of the game in front and didn't win. Simple as that. Carlton were the reverse. Didn't lead much of it, but led when it mattered. So they're 4-0. They're cruising, doing what they need to do, really. Mainly they're struggling early in games. 4 weeks in, they've only won the first half once. And that was the week before against North Melbourne. But they have won every second half by 32, by 6, by 27 and by 13. So they are getting it done in second halves. Inside 50 counts, they're winning them most weeks outside of the first week when Brisbane destroyed them going forward. But they haven't won clearances, as I said, yet this year, and this one was a domination. They lost it by 17, which most of it was stoppage clearances, but they did lose by 4 in centre clearances as well. Their contested footy was good though. To be 4-0 with the amount of minutes that they've led, they only lead by an average of 50 minutes a game, and they've won 4 games, so they'd be happy with that result. They've got a few things to tidy up, but they're certainly trending towards a good season at the moment. The Saturday night game was Western Bulldogs Geelong at Adelaide Oval. This was a cracker, really was. back and forward, Geelong led most of the way. Bulldogs came home hard in the last quarter, but in the end, Geelong held them off. Darcy kicked 3, West kicked 2, Google, Hagan, Waitman kicked 2 as well for the Doggies, while for Geelong, Stingle kicked 4, Cameron, Henry and Bowles kicked 2. Two best players on the ground were Libber and Bontempelli. They were both massive. Two of the bigger games of the year so far. And then Karmas, Jones and Trelaw were the next 3 best players for them. Geelong, Cameron was sensational. He had 20-something touches, kicked a couple goals, was very active going forward. Stengel kicked 4 goals. He was very good in the forward line. Bowies, Stewart and Holmes rounding out that. Votes, I went Libber 3, Bont 2, Jeremy Cameron 1. If we have a look at the 2 teams, we'll look at Geelong first. They're 4-0. I don't know where they sit. They've won 4 games, 2 of them by less than 10 points, the other 2 by 19 and 36. Have they beat anyone? They beat St Kilda, who have not been great the last couple games, so I don't know about them yet. They beat Adelaide and Hawthorn, who haven't won a game between them. And then this week they beat the Bulldogs, which is a big win for Geelong, but I don't know. I want to see them against a good team and see how they go. But if they win that, then all of a sudden they jump into like strong chances for the year. You got to remember it was only a year and a half ago that they were winning a premiership by 80 points. So their team hasn't changed that much. Yeah, it's changed a little bit, but they've still got the main core. And maybe they are the real deal. We'll see once they start coming up against some better teams. They do need to tighten up their fourth quarter. They haven't won a fourth quarter yet this year. But other than that, most things are looking okay. A couple of weeks they've lost the inside 50 count pretty hard. Another team that struggles with clearances, specifically clearances around the ground, but clearances in general. It isn't hurting them. I don't think clearances is the biggest deal breaker in football these days. It can be important in a high scoring, fast flowing game, but Geelong kind of defend very well, so it doesn't seem to hurt them too much. They're the only team in the league that has been leading for over 100 minutes in every game they've played, which is quite a good record. They're flying. We'll see how they go once they go up against some better opposition. Bulldogs, another team I don't really know. Week 1 they got smacked by Melbourne, who were coming off a game when Bulldogs hadn't played yet, so we'll give them a forgive that. Then they beat Gold Coast comfortably, which is a good result in Ballarat. Then they beat West Coast comfortably, which, it was West Coast in Melbourne. And then obviously losing to Geelong, only by 4 points though, so maybe they're there. Maybe they can compete going forward this year. They're running out games very well, but they just need to tighten up a few things, specifically earlier in the game. They probably trailed a bit more than they would like to. Going forward, they're very good. Bont and Libber have been carrying the team. Libber, especially with his clearance work, has been huge. Bont has been getting a lot of it. He kicked a really good goal as well. They're certainly competitive at the moment. We'll see once again, like the others. I want to see where Geelong and Bulldogs kind of sit at the moment, as we haven't really seen them against too much opposition, obviously, other than week 1 when Bulldogs got smacked by Melbourne, but I kind of want to forgive that one. We moved on to Sunday for the 3 final games. First up was the expansion game, Expansion Cup as GWS were calling it all week, against Gold Coast. Another game that was kind of entertaining. Only a couple points at half time. It was still only 8 points at 3/4 time. GWS did blow them away a little bit late, but it was a close-ish game in the end. For Gold Coast, King kicked 3, Roses kicked 2. For GWS, Toby Green bounced into form. He kicked 5, also had, I think, 4 goal assists. He was very good. Jesse Hogan kicked 4. He's had a tremendous start to the year. Cullen Brown kicked 3. Riccardi and Caniglio kicked 2 each. Gold Coast best players, Anderson was best. Mac Andrew was very good down back for Gold Coast. Matt Rowell, Sam Collins and Lukosius surprisingly just was a good link player for them. He was gained him a lot of metres. I think he got like 700 and something metres just as that link player instead of being the key forward that he has been previously. For GWS, Toby Green was best on. Caniglio was very, very good. Himmelberg defended well, as did Buckley, and Briggs has been a surprise packet in the ruck. Gets smacked in the hitouts week in, week out, but he's getting a lot of clearances and doing a lot of things right. If we have a look at the two teams, Gold Coast, where do they sit at the moment? I don't know. They won their first 2. They were looking okay. They then got smacked by the Doggies, and they looked better this week. They were competitive against one of the better teams in the league, so maybe we forgive the Doggies' performance and we say they could be okay this year. They're not running games out very well, which is their main issue. They've lost the second half all 4 weeks, and their disposals, when they win the disposal count. 2 weeks they've lost the disposal count, so that's a bit of a factor at the moment for them. Last 3 games they've lost the inside 50 count. They need to tighten that up. They need to go forward more because their forward efficiency isn't terrible, but it's either good or it's really bad. They're the 2 options at the moment for them. They're getting beaten in clearances, which is surprising when they've got Matt Rowell and Miller and Anderson, and they've got some very good players in the midfield, especially like Matt Rowell, who I think he had 20 clearances himself week 1, but since the first week they haven't won the clearance count again, which is probably slightly concerning because that was probably the best part of their game in the first couple of weeks. Outside of that, that's Gold Coast football. GWS haven't lost yet. They beat Collingwood round 1, opening round. Then they beat North Melbourne and West Coast, which we can't read too much into, and now they beat Gold Coast. So they haven't, outside of the Collingwood game, haven't had the most difficult start to the year, but they've got the job done. They've won 4 of 4. They've kicked over 100 points all 4 weeks. They've won every first quarter. They've only lost 2 quarters for the year. They lost the second quarter this week against Gold Coast, and they lost the 4th quarter against Collingwood in opening rounds. Disposals, they've won it every week. Inside 50s, won it every week except for against Collingwood. Their forward efficiency is okay, sits around the AFL average. Clearances has been better the last 2 weeks. I think Briggs has been probably the key reason for that. He's been very good in the middle. And yeah, that's GWS. They're cruising. They're not the best. Well, they're not flying, but they're getting the job done. And they'll probably continue the next couple of weeks. I think this week they should win round 6, I think. In my head, it's against Carlton. I don't know if that's correct, but I feel like it is, which will, if that is the case, that will be a massive game. So that's GWS. Game number 8 was Richmond and St Kilda at Norwood. This was a weird game. Richmond jumped them 4-0 in the first quarter, and then St Kilda finally kicked a goal right before half-time to go in half-time 33-11 down, and looking not great. They came out in the second half and kicked 6 goals, 6 in the third quarter, and somehow cruised to a 7-point victory. Richmond, Shai Bolton kicked 4, Riola kicked 2. For St Kilda, Higgins was the only multiple scorer with 2. Best players, Bolton for his 4 goals in a low-scoring affair. Dusty Martin was huge. Taranto played well. Nankervis was good, and Brown was good. For St Kilda, Jack Steele was very good. Marshall played well. Wangani Malera was good again. He's had a couple good weeks. I think last week he wasn't great, but the 2 weeks either side of that was in the top few players. Owens was good, and Brad Hill was good. Votes for the Brownlow. I gave Steele 3. Shy Bolton 2 and Dusty Martin 1. Dusty could get the 3 himself though, maybe. He was very good. The 2 teams that played. First, Richmond. They're not miles off. They're certainly improving. Week 1 they were bad against Gold Coast. Week 2 they were good against Carlton and only just lost. Then they got beaten by Port Adelaide, who seemed to be going pretty well. They got the win against Sydney, which I still don't know how that happened. And then they've gone and, for most, or at least the first half, looked the winners against St Kilda. So they're not miles off. I don't know where they sit, really. They get smacked in disposals, which doesn't mean much, but it's the way they're playing football. Inside 50s, they've only won it once 1 week, and that was the week they won the football match. Their disposal efficiency is very low, and also a bad differential, which suggests that they're easy-ish to move the ball against. Their forward efficiency is horrible, and yet they still are winning game. Well, they won 1 game of football, but the last few weeks it's been terrible. I've only had 1 actual week where they were above the AFL average in forward efficiency. Clearances, they're not too bad at. They stick around. They actually have led they've led at least in every game, and you take out the first week against Gold Coast, they've had a decent amount of leading time against everyone. Their tackle pressure's pretty good, and yeah, as a team, they're probably not as far off as maybe I thought they were. I still have them in the bottom 4 or 5 teams, but you never know. They could get on a little run, maybe get a couple wins in a row, and who knows, maybe they could be pushing towards the 9, 10, 11, 12 area of the ladder. St Kilda get out of jail this week. They didn't do it against Essendon, where they won. They didn't win the game. They led parts of it. They looked home in the first half and then fell asleep. This time it was the reverse. They started terribly, and then in the second half came good. So I don't know what to make of St Kilda. They just lost to Geelong week 1. They then beat Collingwood in a very good performance, and then the last 2 weeks is who would know. I personally still don't see them as the top 8 team. Whether that eventuates or not, I don't know. But they need to start winning. Well, they won this one, but they need to win more comfortably, in my opinion, especially against Richmond. For a team that is defending very well, their attacking is not terrible, but their defence is what's holding them together, in my opinion. Week in, week out, they're just getting smacked in tackle. Well, not smacked in tackles, but they lose the tackle count every week. They lose the contested marks every week. They lose the marks inside 50s every week. So it's just, I don't know what to make of them. They're not going terribly, but they're certainly not flying. If they had beaten Essendon last week, it would have been 3-1. And people would be starting to talk about them, but they let themselves down against Essendon, so we'll see what eventuates for them in the coming weeks. One final game of the round, final match of Gabba round was Collingwood Hawthorn at Adelaide Oval, and another game where you just don't know. Collingwood at halftime looked not only home and hosed, they looked back. They were 9 goals for 58, 3-2, 20, 38 points up at halftime. Things were looking breezy for them. Their players were good. They were moving the ball well. Their defence was very strong. And then all of a sudden, their pressure just stopped. Hawthorn turned it up in the second half and came back and only lost by 5 points. Collingwood did miss some chances in that last quarter, which almost cost them the match, but they got home just. Lockie Shields kicked 2, Mychek kicked 2. Hardwick was moved into the forward line in the second half. He kicked 4. He was very good. Dylan Moore kicked 3, and Ginnivan in his first game against the Pies kicked 2. Best players for Collingwood, De Goey was, in my opinion, best on. His efficiency and his disposal wasn't always perfect, but he got a lot of it. He got the ball moving forward. Tom Mitchell was the workhorse in and tight in the contest. He was very good. Josh Dacos was good. Darcy Moore was very good in the back line. He got a lot of spoils, a lot of pressure on the ball coming in. And Darcy Cameron played very well in the ruck for Hawthorn. Hardwick, as I said, he moved forward in the second half and was the turning point for Hawthorn, really. Amon was good. Newcomb was very good. Scrimshaw and Sicily down back were good for the Hawks. Votes, I think 3 goes to De Goey, 2 to Amon. He moved the ball very well. And Tom Mitchell was in and under getting a lot of the ball and played very well. What to make of these two teams? Collingwood, they've won 2 in a row. Not as convincing as they would like, but they're trending in the right way. They go into the bye this week with at least a little bit of momentum. It's been a tough start to the year for them, and to be 2 and 3 is not the end of the world. A few people are writing them off as chances this year, which they haven't shown enough yet to suggest that they're a chance, but it's only 6 months ago they were the best team in the league, and then people were writing them off going into finals as well, because funnily enough Hawthorn beat them and Carlton beat them and Brisbane beat them. So 6 months later, they've had a tough start, but I wouldn't be ruling them out just yet. We'll wait and see how they bounce back after the bye. They do have Port Adelaide in their first game back after the bye, and then they got the Anzac Day clash, and I think they're in Melbourne for the next 4 weeks of their season, so there'll be an interesting period for them if they can get through with 3 out of 4 of the next 4. Then all of a sudden they're 5 and 4, and they're pushing towards the 8. What to make of their game? Their first half was good. Second half was atrocious. As I said, their pressure just dropped off in the second half. Whether that was being tired, whether it was something else, I don't know. But first half they dominated, especially tackles. Second half they were only even in that area. They've won the tackle count 4 out of 5 weeks, so that's not that surprising that they won that again. Contested ball they lost though, which they're probably pretty disappointed at. They probably wanted to win that. Clearances were pretty even. Forward efficiency is actually pretty consistent for Collingwood. You take out first week where they kicked poorly in front of goal. When they go forward, they score pretty regularly. They're certainly looking okay. Going forward, they're just not going forward enough, in my opinion. That's their main issue. Their ball movement kind of stopped on Sunday, and it nearly cost them. But they got the win. They move on to the bye and after, and we'll see what happens with them. As for Hawthorn, completely different team. Obviously, they're 0 and 4, but this is the first positive signs they've had. They looked like they weren't going to have any positive signs at halftime, but they swung Hardwick forward, which was a huge move. They were planning him being forward at the start of the year, and then just injuries around him has caused him to stay back, but they moved him forward. He kicked 4 goals. He looked very good, just leading his opponent to the ball time and time again. So maybe they stick with him up forward and he can be a shining light for them up there. Other than that, their pressure was a lot better in the second half. They won the inside 50s, which they've done 3 out of 4 weeks, which is surprising for how inconsistent they have been as a team so far this year, but they're not terrible. I think towards the end of last year they did start to show some good signs. They're a very young team, so maybe they'll keep growing throughout this year, and by the end of this year they might be starting to be more competitive against some good teams. We'll wait and see. They have only led for 19 minutes and 8 seconds through 4 games, which I think is the lowest in the AFL through the 4 rounds so far. So that is a concerning stat for them, but we'll see what happens in the coming weeks for Hawthorn Football Club. We will now have a look at the awards that I've got going on, and yeah, that's the 9 matches. So after 4 rounds, obviously 5 games for some teams. This is how my predicted Brownlow looks. Isaac Heaney with 11, he has played 5 games, as has Petrarca. He's second with 10, so those two are out in front. And then behind that, a whole bunch of players. Hewitt, Sarong and Josh Kelly with 7. Then Miller, Tom Green, Rose, Jack Steele and Errol Goulden with 6. And Bontempelli as well, sorry. He also has 6. And then 3 players on 5 in Ryan, Gawn and Butters. Obviously some teams have played more games than others, but it's starting to look like Heaney and Petrarca are putting a bit of a gap on them. Both of them have the buys coming up, so we'll see where they sit after that. George Hewitt's been very good for Carlton. Sarong missed out on votes this week, so he falls back into the field a little bit there. And now we'll just quickly look at my MVP voting. So this is I give 5. I give 10, 8, 6, 4 and 2 to the winning team, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for the losing team each week. Isaac Heaney leading this one as well, he's on 41. Petrarca 40, Gawn 32, and then Sarong, Hewitt, Merritt, Rose, Goulden. Mackay's been good for Carlton. Bontempelli, Matt Rowell started hot. His last couple of weeks haven't been as good. Butters, Stewart, Kelly, Tom Green, Jack Steele and Twerk Miller. Obviously, Sydney and Melbourne have played that extra game, so their players up the top. No surprise, but they are get polling week in, week out. So we'll see if that kind of continues going forward. That's everything for this episode of the All Aussie Rules podcast. A bit more detail we went into this week. Let me know what you thought. We actually fully delved into some matches and some stats and stuff, so if you want to keep hearing my opinions on those sort of things, let me know. Thanks for tuning in either way. I enjoyed it. Catch us on the next one.